Take two. I think we're live.
Alrighty, welcome back to Everything EOS, the longest running EOS podcast. Before we dive into it, we got a lot to cover this week in EOSIO and all the news surrounding it. But I do need to remind everybody that we're just two guys online talking about our opinions about this open source software. And nothing we say should be taken as legal, financial, tax, professional, or any other kind of advice. Don't take advice for us or you will likely get wrecked. And any tokens that we talk about on the show, it is safe to assume that we own them for disclosure purposes. But Zach, before we dive into it, I understand you want to send a message out about the link. Is that right?
Yeah, so sorry about that double take. It stopped the stream like after 15 seconds and it wouldn't let us like pick up where we left off on the live stream. So everyone who made it to take two, if you could please share this link in like the main EOS chat and the EOS price channel. That way we don't have to do it while we're trying to live stream here. I do apologize for that. We're still getting used to this live stream, but we've got some really good topics to talk about today. Let's get through some of the new Cypherglass and EOS name service stuff, and then we'll get into the meat of the conversation here. So you said before we went on the air, you have some new names on EOS name service, and also this is the first I've heard of it, ENS 2.0. I haven't seen anything about that.
Yeah, so we're building up. We just announced this on Twitter recently at EOS Name Service, but we're building up for the launch of ENS EOS Name Service 2.0 later this year. It should be on track for September or October, but we'll keep everybody updated there. And essentially what ENS 2.0 will include is a total rebuild of the site. You'll be able to buy multiple names at the same time using either EOS or PayPal with your credit or debit card, which has been requested highly. And the biggest feature that I know a lot of people are looking forward to is the marketplace. So the marketplace that will allow you to actually sell any account names you own, whether you bought them on EOS Name Service or you registered them somewhere else, you'll be able to sell any EOS account name on EOS Name Service as well. So stay tuned for that coming out later this year. But as Zack said, we have 3 new names in addition to the many names we've added in the past. We have .hi, .zen, and .fun over at eosnameservice.io. So if you want one of those custom EOS account names, go get it before this podcast goes out too much and people take all the good names.
All right, so everything's good now. I got the live chat up. The other Cypherglass stuff before we get into the news is Adriana, your community manager at Cypherglass. She will be one of the judges for the Satoshi Awards. So what are the Satoshi Awards? And then I'll bring up something I want to do with Adriana here in the future.
So the Satoshi Awards, they basically have a mission, and then reading it from their website, thesatoshiawards.com, that says the Satoshi Awards recognize those courageous people in blockchain and cryptocurrency and their world-changing ideas and efforts. So it's essentially this award show that they do every year. I believe it started a couple of years ago. And Adriana Mendez, one of our partners and owners at Cypherglass, is going to be one of the judges for the 2020 Satoshi Awards coming up next year in Acapulco, Mexico, I believe. So it should be pretty cool, and there should be good footage from that event as well. But stay tuned for that if you want to learn more. The SatoshiAwards.com or at the Satoshis on Twitter.
So Adriana has been doing something interesting. I've been in communication with her on Telegram. So how she's been in Asia. So this has been a big recurring topic of the bridging the gap of communication between Western block producers and Western developers, and then the Eastern developers and Eastern block producers. And Adriana took it upon herself to actually move to Asia for the last, what's it been now, 2 months?
I think longer than that. I think we might be coming up on 3 months, but I know she's going to stay there, I believe, through at least the end of the year, and then maybe even split her time like 6 months in Asia and 6 months in the US or some other part of the world. But she's been crushing it out there, going to a lot of Asian meetups and different events, and really sort of having a good on-the-ground, boots-on-the-ground perspective for us at Cypherglass to really understand what it is that's happening on the other side of the world with the EOS ecosystem and the crypto ecosystem in general. So as I understand it, I guess she's going to be on the show soon with you to sort of talk about all that. Is that right?
Yeah, as soon as we can schedule something, we'll start putting out publishing some news, I guess, on that. But nice. I want to get her firsthand perspective because I've just been talking to her on Telegram with text, and she's currently, it says in my most recent message, Bangkok, Thailand. She's been running all kinds of meetups and stuff, meeting all kinds of the Chinese BPs, and then there's a couple companies actually in Bangkok, Thailand that she wanted to talk about. So either later, maybe at the end of this week, I guess I don't want it to conflict with with this podcast, but either this week coming up or the week after, we're going to have Adriana on here. Are you going to want to join us, Rob?
Yeah, I'll probably join us as well. I'm curious, obviously we do a weekly call at Cypherglass and I talk to her all the time, but I think it'll be great. And I think you'll have some good questions as well to sort of uncover a lot of what's happening over in the East. So it should be a great podcast. And if you liked the EOS AMA that we did with Hello EOS, we have more of those coming as well. But I think the people that enjoyed that will also really enjoy this discussion with Adriana and should sort of lift the veil on a lot of things happening in the East.
I guess while we're talking about future episodes, I have Effect AI later in our notes, but I will plug this right now. Next Wednesday, that's July 10th, Effect AI, the Mechanical Turk building on EOSIO with the microtasks and training for AI. They're launching their first product, the Effect Force product. That's the Mechanical Turk. They're doing a live launch here on Everything EOS for the hour leading up to the live launch. So that's going to start at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So you can convert that to whatever your local time zone is. But from 1 p.m. Eastern until 2 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be talking about Effect Force. We're going to go through the demo. We're going to talk about like they went from Neo to EOSIO, and they're doing all kinds of stuff. I have it later in the notes. I will talk more about Effect Force. But next Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday, July 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern, we are doing a live launch party leading up to the launch of Effect Force. So that's another episode to look forward to. And then last week, we did a special DSP panel with Ramon from Investing. It was really good, really, really good.
That was very cool.
I actually learned a lot because Ramon from Investing with a Difference, he's just one of those guys, man. He's kind of like you, Rob, where like I don't even want to talk because I just want to listen to him talk the entire time. So we're trying to do more content now that I'm getting a little more comfortable with this software. It's much more finicky than Zoom, but I hope everyone's appreciating the production quality. We want to do more panels. Last week, Rob put out a call to action. Like we this governance stuff, it needs to be talked about more. We need to put people's feet to the fire a little bit more. And we want to do more panels here on Everything EOS. So we want to have more discussion on governance. So we'll have more of that coming up soon. And I guess we'll be jumping around in our notes here. Why don't we bring up the EOS New York thing right now?
Yeah. So this was pretty interesting. Big One, which is a big exchange, I guess, in the East, just announced that they became the #1 EOS block producer by votes. I think they passed Huobi by 100,000 votes or something like that, sitting at almost 150 million votes. And EOS New York tweeted them after they announced this and said, "Congratulations. Does this mean you will now join the discussion surrounding the process to upgrade the EOS mainnet to v1.8, which is required for Block.One to deploy voice? We have not seen you participate in practice runs in Kylan or the Jungle testnet. As #1, you need to lead." And I think they bring up a pretty interesting point here that, as a lot of these BPs have these different incentive models where they're basically buying votes. They're saying, hey, deposit into our exchange and we'll give you 7% on your money if you vote for us. And then they're very quickly moving into the top 21. But the piece that they're not sort of including in that is they're not taking that leadership role and actually participating in things like the 1.8 upgrade. So I think it's great. Shout out to EOS New York for sort of sticking their neck out there and tweeting them, asking them to really join the discussion, because it is crucial for them to be a part of this in order for us to upgrade the mainnet to 1.8.
That's the thing with me is I wish that the top 21 BPs were more geographically diversified. I brought it up last week when we talked about it. If people would feel different if they were still Asian-owned BPs, but more geographically diverse. Maybe they want to run their nodes in North America, even though they're owned by people in Asia. I think that's still better. It might not be ideal for everyone, but I think that's better than all of the nodes being kind of in one part of the world. But the one thing I don't approve of is these nodes sitting in the top 21, producing blocks and not doing their jobs as being leaders on the EOS mainnet. I see way more leaders outside of the top 21 than are in the top 21. And one of the things I want to do here on Everything EOS is kind of put people's feet to the fire and call them out if they're not doing their jobs as block producers in the top 21. So shout out to Kevin Rose and the whole EOS New York team for kind of taking the initiative on this one. Because I know it's really hard for the people that are in the top 21. I'm not sure if EOS New York's in there or not today. They were one of the stewards of the EOS mainnet. We're in the top 21 for the longest time. They only recently got bumped out for the first time. But it's always difficult as a block producer to call out some of these large entities, because they're backed by a bunch of whales and exchanges. So it's always like everyone's kind of walking on eggshells because they don't want to kind of piss off the wrong people and lose votes for themselves. And that's the truth of it. That's the politics of it. And it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So I really, really want to just give credit to EOS New York for that. And while I'm on here, I want to call out another BP, CoChain. CoChain really needs to get their act together. They're constantly last on CPU on Aloha EOS. They have CPU benchmarks for the speed that they're running their node and the latency, and they're consistently dead last in not even just the top 21. Like out of the top 30, they're some of the worst performing BPs, but they're always in the top 21. And I think we really got to hold these nodes accountable for all the block rewards they're pulling in. They should be upgrading their infrastructure. There's no excuse for CoChain World, and there's no excuse for Big.One. Is that what they're called? I don't have it in front of me. Big.One?
Yeah, Big.One. Especially, I mean, if you look at the amount of money that somebody like Big.One in the #1 spot is making now, converted to dollars, it's about $5,000 or $4,000 to $5,000 per day. So they could take 1 day of revenue per month and hire somebody full time to look at this 1.8 issue if they really wanted to. So it's not a matter of resources. It's not a matter of having enough people or enough money. So hopefully after this tweet from EOS New York, they will get their act together, because otherwise it'll just continue to delay that 1.8 launch, unfortunately.
And I talked to Kevin last week. Right after, I think it was the day after we did that live stream last weekend, Rob, where you called everyone out and said, like, we got to do more talk about governance, get this out there. I talked to Kevin Rose from EOS New York. He agreed he would come on a show in the very near future.
Oh, good.
So he's someone I want to have on a panel. I want to do more panels, just like we did with the DSPs last week. I want to do governance talk. And anyone from the Eastern BPs, like, we want to bridge this gap. Reach out to us. We will have you on this show. We want your perspective, because I don't want to believe that they are doing nothing. I think that these BPs are doing work. I mean, they're running big exchanges, which is a business in itself, but I want to know more about what they're doing, and I hope this is just a communication issue. Rob, do you think that this is mostly a communication issue, or do you think that there are people, block producers, that are kind of just taking and not giving?
I think it's a mix. I think with Big.One, they obviously contributed a lot before the EOS mainnet, and then even I think shortly after the mainnet launch. So I think it's most likely a communication issue when it comes to them. But I would say there are definitely BPs, at least from my perspective, that are not doing a lot in the top 21 or even in the standby pool and just kind of sitting back and collecting rewards, which is obviously not the greatest component of this system. But hopefully over time, this will resolve itself. Big.One will get in and help implement 1.8, because that really is the missing link for us to be able to, or for Block.One rather, to be able to push voice to the mainnet. So
speaking of 1.8, let's get positive here. Some really cool stuff came out from Block.One. EOSIO Labs on July 6th. That's actually today. Okay, so this came out this morning. Yeah, I feel like I've seen it for over a day now, but okay. So it came out this morning. EOSIO Labs released their specifications repo for architecture and approach for feedback. So this is basically all of the stuff that is going to be possible with 1.8. So you want to kind of recap everyone what's coming in 1.8, what EOSIO 1.8 is, and mostly I want you to just explain the delegating CPU to your users, because that's the kind of the biggest part of it that I'm excited for.
Yeah, so 1.8 is the next major software upgrade for EOSIO that we have to implement on the EOS mainnet. And it requires what's called a coordinated hard fork, where essentially all of the BPs have to get together and, basically push a button at the same time to flip a switch and upgrade us to 1.8. There's a lot of complex technical things that happen behind the scenes when all that happens, but essentially that's it. It requires coordination amongst anybody running their own full node, anybody that's running a BP. So an insane amount of coordination, second only to really the original mainnet launch, which is why it's so important that people like Big.One join these chat groups and Telegram and other places to really be a part of that conversation, be a part of these test runs on the Kylan and Jungle test nets, just like all these people were a part of the test runs before the mainnet actually launched. But what's cool about 1.8 is that it introduces some pretty big features, one of which I know Block.One is waiting on for voice.com, which is that rather than forcing all of your users to have enough CPU and net in their accounts, you can actually make it so that your contract, your app, voice.com, whatever it might be, can pay for that CPU and net on behalf of your users. So essentially, this just reduces the barrier to entry even more, where if Block.One is giving people free EOS accounts when they sign up for voice, they don't then have to stake them EOS. They don't have to, stake one EOS to net and one EOS to CPU. Instead, Block.One can simply pay for their CPU and net as they need it, as they're interacting with voice.com. So that's a pretty cool feature. But essentially what this EOSIO Labs release covers is Block.One is trying to have a better forum, a better repository to interact with the open source developer community. So these are things, there's some pretty cool things in here, one of which is obviously contracts paying transaction costs, but they have an example contract that anybody can take and use to implement that functionality into their dapp. And what they're trying to create with this release is just this centralized in a good way, and that all of the information is central in one repository that anybody can access, and they don't have to search around in 100 different places. But a bunch of different templates, a bunch of open source contributions that will sort of help all dapps will live in this repo. So in addition to contracts paying transaction costs, there's things like a new token standard, which I thought was pretty interesting, called an enhanced token that will actually allow for cross-chain transactions and interactions through the use of sub-accounts, which is pretty interesting. You have synchronous calls between contracts, flexible notifications. There's all kinds of stuff in this release that you can check out if you go to EOSIO or EOS.io/news and click on that most recent blog post that Zack has up.
Yeah, so it's all the code. So we all know, or a lot of us have known, that once 1.8 is implemented, that dapps will be able to delegate CPU to their actual users, so that their users don't actually have to stake on their own. But so just because that ability is possible doesn't mean that anyone would know how to do it right away, So that's exactly what Block.One's doing, is they're releasing like the template code so that if you are a dapp and after 1.8 is released, you'll be able to implement all of the new features made possible through the EOSIO 1.8 upgrade and beyond, because I think some of this stuff is probably implementable today. I don't know if all of it requires 1.8. This just came out this morning, so I haven't had a ton of time to digest it. But I highly recommend everyone go check it out on their own because there's a lot of cool things there happening. And seeing the example code is a big step in the right direction for making that stuff happen. And
definitely. And Block.One really sort of summed it up very well in one sentence. They said that the EOSIO specification repository is a dedicated repository in GitHub through which the developer community can easily collaborate with B1. So they're really looking for that collaboration between developers, Block.One, to sort of guide these new features, but also potentially guide the direction of EOSIO software in general, because they want to know feedback from the people that are actually using it.
I'd like to get some feedback on some people. How about those LiquidAccounts and Liquid Elemental Battles, Rob?
I'm pretty excited about that. That was huge when I saw that news come out. It's something that I wasn't expecting so soon. But it looks like they're finally here. Do you give us a little overview of what a liquid account actually is?
So I guess before the liquid account, let me backtrack to the whole thing. So with LiquidApps, one of the onboarding issues we've had is that we needed to push out an implementation, an example of how all of these awesome services like LiquidAccounts, Oracles, VRAM, how all of this stuff could be implemented. So we had documentation on some of it, but the one that everyone was waiting for is the LiquidAccounts, because LiquidAccounts offer onboarding for free for new users. So what we did at LiquidApps was we took the Elemental Battles tutorial, which is the Block.One built tutorial for onboarding to EOSIO. It's the same tutorial that everything EOS and LiquidApps' own Peter Keay, he used for his EOSIO developer series, which if you're looking at our little bottom scroller bar here, you can see where to sign up for that at everythingeos.io/dev, plug that. But Elemental Battles is like a tutorial to learn EOSIO development. But what we did was we took it up an extra notch. We added functionality for not only LiquidAccounts, but we added an IPFS front end. We have a DNS, EOSIO DNS, Liquid DNS back, DNS, I'll just say, which is actually a new service that we haven't even put a lot of news out on yet. But it's essentially going to be something that someone like Rob with EOS DNS is it .com or .io, Rob? I'm brain farting here. .io. A project like that is actually able to implement this service so that decentralized DNS could actually happen without a Chrome extension. So like if you have a GoDaddy URL, you could actually plug in the DNS of these Liquid DNS endpoints that a DSP could operate. But LiquidAccounts is the like most notable feature here. And the way that Liquid Accounts works is it creates a private key within the browser using just your username and password. So whenever you, let me just pull this up. I'll pull it up on the screen here. Actually, the link I had in the notes was not the right one. Rob, can you talk for like 10? Can you talk for like 10 seconds here?
I mean, the most exciting part about Liquid Accounts to me is that for the first time, you now have a way to onboard people into your dapp without having to pay any kind of account creation fee. So obviously, you know, at some point, these users that make Liquid Accounts may want to upgrade to a full EOS account for a variety of reasons. But essentially, this enables somebody like Block.One, for example, to onboard, say, 100 million, 200 million people onto voice.com without having to subsidize and pay for every single person to get a free EOS account. So whether they end up using this or end up buying EOS accounts for people like they've said remains to be seen. But this is big news for a lot of developers and can save developers a lot of money, which is a great thing.
So basically, here's just the front end example. This is where you go whenever you see the Liquid Elemental battles. I put my account name as Zack Gall. I typed in a password. I register and I log in. Wrong password. What the heck?
You probably have already used that username before.
Joe Schmo. There we go. Joe Schmo now has a Liquid EOS account. So the way that a private key, and there's no scatter wallet involved, it's all completely abstracted from the user. This is the most basic implementation you're going to see with Liquid Accounts. It can get more advanced than this, where there could be a way for once you have a certain amount of tokens in that Liquid account, you'll be able to create an actual mainnet EOS account from that Liquid wallet or Liquid account. But basically what a Liquid account is, it's storing a private and public key in VRAM, but everything's hashed that you can't actually, nobody knows the private key except for the end user. And that private key is generated based on a mix of the username, the password that the user generated for themselves, and then we also have like a secret phrase that goes into the seed of creating the private key so that if someone knew your username and password, for example, they wouldn't be able to they wouldn't be able to get your private key because they don't know our secret seed phrase. And that would be for any dapp building if they would be able to kind of put their own extra layer of security in on this. But Liquid Accounts, this is the most basic implementation of it, but it's the most complete thing that we've open sourced and released to the public to date. But I actually learned from Ramon, from investing with a difference in Block.Start. He was on our show last week for a DSP panel, which a DSP is like the nodes operating on top of the dapp network. And he said that he has a Liquid Accounts implementation that he's already built that could be implemented not tomorrow, but today by any centralized exchange in existence. It could be implemented and it could give voting rights to every user on that centralized exchange because they would all have a Liquid account. Because if you think about how an exchange works today, they have an internal database that basically tracks how many tokens are associated with which account. Right. And the only time it actually touches the EOS mainnet's whenever you're transferring out from their hot wallet, for example. So what this does is it creates kind of like a trustless account system that could be used for like the internal accounting and uses within like a centralized platform. I think Ramon could probably explain it a lot better than me, but that literally blew my mind. And he kind of, when we're talking about putting people's feet to the fire, like we're trying to do with governance, Ramon basically called out every centralized exchange and said, if you're not doing this, it's because you don't want to, because the technology is here and it's ready and it's able to be implemented. And if anyone's running an exchange and they want this technology, reach out to Ramon at Block.Start. I think their URL is blockstart.one. So I highly recommend you check that out because he said it's ready.
But lots of exciting things happening on the dapp network. It's crazy. You guys delivered with VRAM, which I saw Karma can actually reduce their weekly RAM costs from about $800 to less than $1, which I covered in that video, which I thought was pretty insane, just the cost savings. So now you delivered on Liquid Accounts and DNS and all this stuff. So I'm super excited to see where the dapp network kind of goes. But in chat, Colin Talks Crypto says, hello, gentlemen. Keep up the great shows. Thank you, Colin. Same to you. Keep up the great videos. I've seen your channel is blowing up recently. So That's
Yeah,
been awesome.
Colin, and welcome to Puerto Rico. It seems like so many people are moving to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Nat from LiquidApps moved to Puerto Rico. Brock's been in Puerto Rico for a while. Colin Talks Crypto moved to Puerto Rico. Isn't some of the EOS DAC guys like Luke Stokes, I think's in
Yeah,
Puerto
Luke is
Rico.
down there. It's mostly for the tax benefits through Act 20 and 22, I believe. But it seems like they're building a big crypto community down there, which is pretty cool as well.
Ash, Enze, and Oro, shout out to them, moved to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Rob, have you ever considered making the move?
I have, yeah. This was several years ago, right before the hurricane. I was deciding between there, San Francisco, when I had an opportunity with an exchange out there before ICO Alert, and then Pittsburgh is where I ended up actually moving for a year to build out ICO Alert with my brother, and that's where I met you, obviously, Zach. But yeah, I considered it a long time ago, and then the hurricane sort of scared me away. So I'm staying in the U.S. now for the foreseeable future.
And before we move on from LiquidAccounts and LiquidApps, I just want to point out that we have new services being built every day, not only by LiquidApps, but by the community. And it never happens in secret. I popped up on the screen. This is just from our documents. So if you go to liquidapps.io and go to our documents, this is document version 1.4. It has a list of services. And if you look at these services, a lot of them haven't really even been talked about yet, but they're hiding here, right here in plain sight for anyone to see. So if anyone wants to look at the GitHub for things like Liquid Storage, Liquid Log, Liquid Archive, Liquid DNS, it's all right there out in the open for everyone to see. And you're going to find it in our documents and in our GitHub repos way before you're going to see a blog article about it or an implementation in Elemental Battles or something like that. So anyone developing that wants to be on the cutting edge of EOSIO, I highly recommend you check that out.
That's awesome. That's quite the tip.
Yeah. We jumped around a little bit. We're talking about new developments. pEOS just published their Q2 update. Some big news. So I'll read through the bullet points, and then you could go on to explain. Beta on Jungle testnet. They're more open source code. UTXOs are happening on the mainnet, and UI wallet coming soon.
Yeah. So as you all know, I'm a huge fan of pEOS and how they're sort of building this privacy ecosystem on EOS. And that's ultimately what sets pEOS apart from other existing privacy coins like Monero, for example, where Monero is on its own standalone blockchain. So it's really not decentralized exchange compatible. You can't use it in other dApps and all these ancillary ways. Whereas, pEOS being built on the EOS mainnet and sort of existing there actually has no inflation. It's a fixed supply. There are basically no transaction fees except for a few bytes of RAM anytime you anonymize your pEOS because it is built on EOS. And of course, it is dapp compatible. So if you didn't see, pEOS released a 50 million pEOS bounty, which is about $2.5 or $3 million to fund dApps that want to integrate with pEOS. So those may be things like Dmail, where you can then make a fully private message by stamping a message with a pEOS token. We're looking at an EOS name service on allowing you to make an account fully anonymously using anonymized pEOS. And I know Karma is one as well that is looking to integrate. So all these dApps are sort of building up this pEOS privacy ecosystem on EOS. But what's so big about this Q2 update, sort of ending out Q2, now we're moving into Q3, is that they've delivered on everything they said they were going to deliver on. We saw the UTXOs earlier, unspent transaction outputs, which is kind of this foundation for a lot of different privacy technologies on EOS, one of which is CoinJoin, where essentially a bunch of people send their pEOS into this contract with set outputs, and then it sort of mixes it all up and spits it all out on the other end. So you can't tell who sent which pEOS to which account. But the big news in this Q2 update was that the UTXOs are actually, they've been published on mainnet, and all of the code for those UTXOs has actually been open sourced. So you can now actually run a CoinJoin obfuscation process using your pEOS on the EOS mainnet right now, which is pretty amazing. But beyond that, the full scope of the pEOS privacy technology obviously goes way beyond CoinJoin, way beyond UTXOs. That beta smart contract has now been released as promised on the Jungle testnet as well. And the team will be testing out that full smart contract over the next couple months and releasing it on the mainnet in Q3. So really big news in that a lot of people were sort of unsure whether or not the team was going to deliver because they are an anonymous team. And now we've seen with UTXOs on mainnet coming out, the actual full pEOS smart contract being published on the Jungle testnet, that it really does seem like the team is going to deliver in full. So it's pretty exciting. And this whole privacy ecosystem is really starting to come to life.
How big is their team? Because I know Mel's the guy in charge, and I know they're all anonymous, but do we know how many people by any chance?
No, I don't think anybody does.
I mean, it's got to be more. It's got to be a decent sized team. It can't just be like one or two
I'd
people.
Yeah, I would think so, just based on the high quality UI and UX in the wallet, which they said is coming next week, which is pretty exciting because we all saw that UI. I did a big preview on the Cypherglass channel, but nobody's actually been able to use the wallet yet. So they say that full release will come out next week, and you'll be able to integrate with the Jungle smart contract and really try it all out. But it's got to be at least a couple people. I would imagine somebody for smart contracts and the privacy side, somebody for UI and UX. Maybe it is just one really talented person. I don't know, but they sort of come across as having a large team.
Colin Talks Crypto wants us to talk about lower BPs and the state of lowering inflation from 5% to 1%.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty much been agreed upon already that BPs are going to reduce it to 1%. I think what they're waiting for in 1.8 is there's this sort of easy control knob on inflation in 1.8 that allows the BPs to just sort of move that from 5% quickly to 1%. So I know a lot of them are sort of waiting for that to come out before they make that change. But based on the vote that we had in the referendum system, based on the 15 out of 21 vote that the BPs took multiple times, I think that's pretty much set in stone that is going to happen.
All right, I'm looking. We jumped around on the notes. I guess we can get back to the Effect AI stuff. Is that where you want to go from here?
Yeah, if you'd like. I'm excited for that. So is this a mainnet launch party where Effect AI is actually launching on the EOS mainnet during this?
Yeah, so their Effect
Okay.
Force has been in a beta for a while. So this is going to be the actual launch of the beta onto the main net, and they're
Nice.
literally going to launch it on the air with us so that it can
Oh,
go
wow.
live and everyone can be in the chat. And I mean, Chris has been on the Cypherglass channel before. We've never had him on Everything EOS. There's actually a lot of people we've never had on Everything EOS. And the reason was because we were producing a lot of the content, and it would have roughly a 48-hour time frame between the time we would record it and the time we would air it. And I would be very meticulous with editing it because I put a lot of pressure on myself to put out a good product. I'm getting over doing this live stuff. I know I mess up a lot, but that's okay because now we're able to get to the point where we could have on more guests and allow more interactions and more education for the general community. I did a panel last week. I told you guys I want to do a panel with more block producers or governance leaders, including EOS New York. I did have EOS Nation on already. Eve's a great person to have in the EOSIO ecosystem, so he might even be in on the governance talk. But I also want to have projects on, and we're trying new things constantly, so I think doing this launch party is going to be awesome. They put a graphic out. I don't have it prepared to pop up on the screen, but they did a cool graphic for us. It's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern on July 10th, but they've been doing some awesome stuff. So are you able to kind of explain what Effect Force does, or do you want me to kind of try?
Yeah, I mean, Effect Force is the first component, right? The sort of mechanical Turk.
Mechanical Turk, yes.
Yeah, so essentially, in training AI algorithms, there's a lot of sort of human interaction that has to take place. Whether it's, if you're doing something like visual training, you can say, oh, this photo is a dog or is not a dog. This is a cat or is not a cat. And you sort of train these algorithms over time to then be able to recognize, for example, oh, that is a photo of a dog and that is a photo of a cat. But it requires a lot of human sort of interaction and training over time. So essentially what Effect AI and Effect Force are doing is building this marketplace where you, as somebody who writes an AI algorithm, can go out and basically recruit a huge pool of people to do that training for you. So they can say, yes, that is a crosswalk. No, it's not. I'm sure you've all seen the Google Captchas pop up where it says, hey, select all the bicycles in the images. You are training essentially AI, some kind of neural network in that process. So that's what they're doing on a sort of distributed level where you can go out and pick up 100 people or 1,000 people and have them train your algorithms.
The unique thing that they're doing, though, is they're giving opportunity to people in areas where there's not a whole lot of economic opportunity. So Mechanical Turk's been around for at least 10 or 15 years, where they do they do these micro tasks. They get paid like fraction of a penny or pennies per task. Like Rob said, maybe you're looking at images and you're saying, is there a cat in the picture? Yes or no? And you're basically training an AI to be able to detect a cat in an image. It goes much further than that. I have a friend who they do like solar panel installation or data, I guess, and that data is more difficult because they look at like satellite images of clusters of houses, and they have to like determine like the angles of the rooftops and like what the rooftops are made of and stuff. So the tasks can get more advanced, but they use like centralized services to actually do this image training. So something like AFI just does it in a trustless way. This isn't a new technology because people like Amazon have been doing it for a long time, but the problem is because of the modern banking system, there's huge problems with transferring value across borders, especially in countries.
Go ahead.
Especially in countries with a lot of unbanked people, because they might not have bank accounts, but they're fully capable of training these AIs. So I'm trying to find the article in front of me, but I do have some notes. Effect AI, they've already launched some pilot tests in the country of Georgia, and from those pilots, so they had I think university students in the country of Georgia doing these micro tasks.
Oh wow!
And then they reported that data to the United Nations. So this is what I mean. I think I said on a previous episode where they're talking with big name, like household name companies, like the United Nations is working with Effect AI essentially to plan out how this infrastructure could be built to allow more opportunities to happen in countries that aren't as privileged as our own.
Wow, that's exciting.
It is. It really is. I'm looking for the other countries here.
It says Mongolia, Pakistan, Nigeria, Kenya. That's pretty cool. And I mean, in a lot of these places, a huge percentage of the global population has a cell phone, for example, and has access to the internet, but doesn't have a bank account or some way to make money. So giving them, something like a crypto wallet, whether that's a Liquid account or maybe a full-on EOS account that Effect AI provides them, you can really see how impactful this could be on their day-to-day lives, being able to earn money from their cell phone.
And then before we move on from Effect AI, because Chris is going to be able to give a much better explanation of all of this stuff, I'm just winging it because I'm not in the weeds of the project, but it's something that we've been watching from before. We actually were some of the first people to introduce Effect AI. Like whenever they first moved over to the EOS mainnet, that was the episode you came to my house and we recorded in person.
Oh yeah.
And they saw it, and that's how we kind of started this relationship. They actually said we did a good job, but it says in one of their blog articles they've been making inroads with the governments in Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand. And I think Australia is the most recent one that they put a blog article about last week.
That's awesome.
Really cool stuff. I'm really happy to be working with them because I love these social causes. Like they benefit people that are in underprivileged areas. I just spent my 4th of July actually talking about forming a DAO for social impact. In particular with helping people with hearing loss or who have hearing impaired issues in third world countries. So like this is the stuff that hits home to me. So I love talking about it. And as far as the DAO stuff, we'll get into that like months from now, like when it's further fleshed out. But there's some really cool stuff happening with some really cool people here in the EOSIO ecosystem. I'm never surprised by the good being done. I don't let the bad news, like the stuff we talked about at the beginning, I don't let that let me down because there's so much good stuff happening on the EOS mainnet still.
And Crypto Media had a good, this is sort of a tangent, but he said, did you see all the hardware wallets are hacked? That's not exactly true. First of all, it doesn't apply to ledgers at all. So if you have a ledger, you're totally safe. It doesn't impact you. But things like a Trezor and many other hardware wallets have some kind of a security vulnerability that was just discovered where if somebody gets physical access to the device, so if they steal your Trezor from you, in a matter of like 10 or 15 minutes, they can use this program to sort of extract the private key. Again, it only impacts you if you have a Trezor or one of these other hardware wallets, and if somebody gets physical access to the Trezor and has the software to take the private key. But I believe it's been patched already, and like I said, does not affect ledgers at all. So just want to get that out there so everybody knows.
Stop the FUD. Stop the FUD.
Pretty much. But moving on, should we move on to this DEX news that's happening? It seems like a lot of stuff these days.
Yeah. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, so let's talk about EOS FinX first. So EOS FinX is obviously launching on July 25th. If you haven't heard already, they've been beta testing for the last 4 months, and the contracts have actually been audited by the EOS Argentina team, a standby block producer, which I thought was pretty cool as well. But here's a quick quote from them. Developed by the Bitfinex team, EOS FinX combines the scalability and speed of EOS with Bitfinex's industry-renowned expertise to deliver a fast, transparent, and secure platform for digital asset trading. EOS FinX brings all core exchange components on-chain, including order books, matching engine, and custody solutions. So this will be a pretty cool experiment to see how this all works when it's actually running on-chain. And it's a DEX that I'm looking forward to using.
I'm actually trying to get it up on my screen. I'm trying to log into my scatter here without showing all of my accounts because it's on a test net. There's another exchange, though, that launched, non-custodial what was it? NewDex released a new,
Matching. Yeah.
NewDex actually also just came out with a great new upgrade. I think they just blogged about it recently, but it's been out since July 1st. They actually released a new contract that moves their matching and settlements on chain. So it's nice to see that these DEXes. So when you hear DEX, you hear decentralized exchange, you think it's completely decentralized, but there's still a lot of times like a centralized component to it. And that's just because most things can't be decentralized from day one. They kind of become more and more decentralized over time is kind of the best way to, I guess, think of it. And they said, quote, in its early days, questions were raised regarding NewDex's legitimacy as a DEX since it required users to deposit assets to a non-smart contract EOS address for pending orders. NewDex took these community feedback very seriously. In the following months, the team has implemented smart contracts from the first function of trading cancellation to the now full-blown smart contract handling, matching, and settlement on chain. And now, with the deployment of these smart contracts, it is believed that NewDex is one of the most decentralized exchanges on the EOS chain. So they think that they're going to be one of the most decentralized. I don't know how to compare how decentralized something is compared to another without like really understanding the code of both projects. But I think EOS FinX is going to give them a run for their money. I hope they're both successful because the more the merrier, the more decentralized it is with the more competition, friendly competition. What do you think about this with the DEXs kind of upgrading?
I mean, I think it's great. The more that we can move towards, truly trustless decentralized exchanges, the better, of course. I think NewDex is probably doing this in response to EOS FinX coming out and launching. But I think what will sort of determine a lot of this is whether or not EOS FinX geo blocks by region. So for example, if you're coming from a US IP address, if EOS FinX blocks you, then I could see NewDex taking a lot of that extra business and sort of keeping a lot of those trades. Whereas if EOS FinX doesn't do that, or if it's super easy to get around that using a VPN, then maybe NewDex will lose some kind of trading volume. But ultimately, I think EOS FinX will bring the overall EOS and EOS token markets, all these different dapp tokens that we have. It's going to bring a huge amount of liquidity to them. So the net effect here will be very, very positive for EOS and for all those dapp holders. So I'm excited about it.
All right, so it seems like I'm not going to be able to get this EOS FinX thing up in time, so that's okay.
That's all right.
Yeah, I don't. All these testnet accounts, I always get messed up using people's stuff on testnets because I'll create a Kylan account or Jungle account, and I delete it, and then I just mess things up. But whatever, it looks really good. If you've ever been on the regular Bitfinex, it looks almost the exact same, and it's just as fast. So once we get the speed and scalability of these exchanges with the order matching, then the biggest issue to come is going to be liquidity. So that's what has me the most excited is how can the company Bitfinex even get like a small percentage of their liquidity into EOS FinX or to move to EOS FinX, because that's one of the biggest issues that I see with all of these DEXes or almost DEXes like NewDex is there's not a lot of liquidity. I would say some of even the top tokens. Do you know like the amount of trade volume that it is, Rob? Because it's hard for me to calculate because NewDex, for example, shows trade volume in the actual token. So for example, if you're looking at pEOS, it might say like 2 million for like trade volume, but unless you know like what the value is, I guess you could just do some simple math, but most centralized exchanges show you the trade volume measured in Bitcoin. So I would be nice to see these exchanges showing it measured in
I'm not sure. I know that NewDex is right now, in terms of volume, is the biggest decentralized exchange on EOS. It beats out WhaleX, it beats out DEXios and all these others. It's sort of the main place to trade right now. So it'll be interesting to see that NewDex EOS FinX battle for sure. We have some other exciting news on the wallet front coming from Scatter. Do you want to pull up this UI preview that they put out?
Yeah, it looks sexy.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like that they have, you'll see it up on the screen here really soon. I like that they have proxies in the top right corner, sort of very prominently displayed to encourage more voter participation on the mainnet. I think it's going to be great.
So Rami James, Nathan James' brother, he's head of like UX UI and everything that goes along with that. He released this screenshot on Twitter. When did he do this? Looks like it was 2 days ago, July 4th. So looking forward to seeing that. They just released Scatter 11. Is it still in beta? I do.
Yeah, I think so.
I have that too. It says don't trust with a lot of money. I'm probably stupid for
Yeah,
doing it.
I just use my existing, the same scatter that I've had for a while. But there's another exciting thing happening. EOSphere is actually putting on a charity poker tournament on the Dice platform. And depending on when this goes down in the time, I may actually be participating as well. So it should be a lot of fun. But if you can pull up that Medium article, Zach, this is happening July 27th at 12 p.m. UTC time. There's a 10 EOS buy-in, and immediately once you deposit that 10 EOS for the buy-in, 5 EOS of that will go to the humanelove.org charity, which is a great charity on EOS. I believe they support people somewhere in Africa. But so 50% of it will immediately go to that charity, and then the rest will, sort of be accumulated in one big pot for somebody to walk home with a pretty significant amount of EOS, whoever wins the charity poker tournament. So I think this is great to see platforms like Dice really going out there, and shout out to EOSphere for making this charity focused.
So you're a maybe on that. I'm a definite. I will be definitely playing in this tournament. So if you guys want to get wrecked by the Poker King, I'll be there to wreck everyone. I think we should end this. We could interact with the crowd a little bit, but one of the crowd I want to interact with is the EOS radio show. Did you see that they challenged us on Twitter to a game recently, Rob?
Yeah, to Super Smash tournament, right?
Yeah.
I noticed there haven't been a lot of details since. I think they might be a little scared.
So I'm gonna figure out how we could get the Nintendo Switch to live stream here on the channel.
Yes,
we are going to do this. I didn't even talk to them before the show about this, but very soon. I think we could do it within the next 2 weeks. What I want to do is I want to be full screen with the game of Super Smash Brothers of me and Robo Rob whooping ass of the EOS Radio guys. We'll have videos of ourselves in the 4 corners of the screen, and the whole bulk of the screen is going to be the game. And we're gonna talk shit on each other. We're gonna talk about EOS. We're gonna talk about governance, and we're gonna play Super Smash Brothers.
I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be awesome, and of course, everything EOS is gonna win. You know it. Pick us. We're the team to win.
We'll talk to them after the show, go over some details, set a time, date, and a wager. Rob's a big he's known for his wagers. I don't think it's gonna be for 1,000 EOS, but I think we should do a fun wager of something we'll do on each other's shows or something. But
that sounds great.
We'll flesh that out more. Is there anything else we want to cover before we hop off here?
I think that's all I have for now. Remember to check out those names at eosnameservice.io and scoop some of those up. We got some exciting things coming.
I got confirmation in the chat. Scatter 11 is out, so that's what I'm using is Scatter 11. It does look different than the old one. I was using it from the beta, so I didn't really realize when I updated. I always update whenever it asks me to. So, all right, so Scatter 11's out. New UI. Wait for that. Cypherglass. Vote for Cypherglass, our channel sponsor. EOS Name Service has some new names coming out. Check out the LiquidApps, Liquid Elemental Battles, which includes LiquidAccounts. pEOS 2 quarter 2 update. New contract out from NewDex. EOS Finch launching on July 25th. Effect AI live stream next Wednesday for a launch party to launch Effect Force. What else did I miss? I think we hit it all. Oh, EOS New York, keep on wrecking people on Twitter. We'll back you up every time. Shots fired at Big One. I back you up 100%. EOSIO Labs release. Check that out if you didn't get enough from our little quick talk about it. The specification repo for architecture and approach feedback. Definitely check out that blog article. Adriana, the community manager at Cypherglass, going to be a judge for the Satoshi Awards. And I think I just covered it all. So
that's awesome. You ready to close this out?
Yes. So until Wednesday, with Chris from Effect AI, I'm Zack Gall.
I'm Rob Finch. And this is everything EOS. Go EOS! Leave a Go EOS in the chat. Smash a thumbs up. We'll see you Wednesday.